Hello and welcome to Inside the Third Space. In each episode, we delve into the concept of being in the third space through the unique perspectives of different individuals, uncovering their insights, experiences, and identity. I'm Morgan Harris, an educational developer for the Faculty of Engineering at UNSW Sydney. To me, the third space is the overlapping space between the professional and the academic worlds, the overlap in the Venn diagram, the place where those two places intersect. Today, I'm joined by Lucy Jellema, an educational developer for equity at PVCE at UNSW Sydney. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, tell me more about your role. How did you end up here?
So my role's quite unique in that I'm an ed developer and I work within the academic development team for the PVCE, but I am not a part of any of their BAU projects. My job is completely separate in that the funding for my role came through the Gateway Equity Target.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so UNSW set a target in 2023 to have, I believe, 25% of students from a low SES background enrolled. And so my role was formed to support teaching staff to support those students. So that's why I kind of sit with the academic development team in that that's a really, it makes the most sense to sit with them, but I kind of go between that and the project team for the Gateway Equity Target. So it's a bit of an interesting position.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's a fascinating title, at least. It gets people talking, I'm sure. So, as an ed dev for equity, what does your day look like?
So what's fun is that I determine that. So I'm very independent for the most of it, in that when I came to UNSW, I did a bit of a pulse check with all of the faculties, had a look at the business case of why I was hired, and then came up with a proposal of what I thought would be the best way to support teaching staff. And because of that...
You wrote your own job description?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow,
pretty
okay.
much, yeah. So when I was hired, it was very, very open-ended. And so I got to sort of say, this is what teaching staff have said they need. This is how I think we should do it. And now it's just trying to do all the things.
Fabulous.
Yeah, which is good in some ways, because, having a bit of freedom is really great for, creativity and being able to stay motivated. But also because I have ADHD, I also have a tendency to have a great idea, run with it, and then I have 50 million things to do because I got so excited about all these projects at once. So yeah, I think I can be my own worst enemy sometimes, because I want to change the world and I'm only one person. So that can be, the harder part of sort of setting your own position.
So what does the word third space mean to you?
So honestly, I hadn't heard it until I was a few months into my position.
Okay.
And it was when I saw a flyer on one of my colleagues' desks about a third space. I think it was a professional development or something. It was something. And so immediately went back and went, what is third space? Just Googling it and realizing, that's actually me. That's my role. So yeah, it's just that you're a professional within the world of academics and working together, supporting. And yeah, that's sort of how I see the third space, is that overlap between the professional roles and the academic roles within a university.
So did you come to your position from an academic background or a professional background or from somewhere else entirely?
So this is the first time I've worked at a university.
Okay.
But it rounds out my CV nicely because I've now worked in every level of education there is. So
1, 2, and 3? 4, 5,
4. So I did, my undergraduate degree was in early childhood and primary teaching. I had no interest in early childhood. It was just to help me get a job as a primary teacher, which it did. But so I worked a bit in early childhood casually, then was a primary teacher for years, then specialised by doing a master's in inclusive education to try and keep the love alive of teaching, because that's all I ever wanted to be, and I was getting a bit disenfranchised. And so tried to specialise, which then led me to working at a really unique school for gifted students from rural and remote backgrounds. So it's online from years 5 to 12, And we had students from all across New South Wales, from, like Dubbo, Broken Hill, all over the place. And so then I got to tick high school off that list, and now I'm in university. So, yeah, it's... but I definitely... Doing my master's to specialise didn't help. Yeah, it kept me in the profession for 2 more years, but I realised that part of who I am is that I have trouble leaving work at work, and especially working with students, I care too much, like to my own detriment, and I couldn't... The system, in my opinion, I feel like the systems within education aren't actually built for what's best for the learner, and I think the priorities aren't always right, and that was breaking my heart on a daily basis. And so I decided to go, screw this, I'm just going to go and make a bunch of money, like, let's go corporate. So that lasted about 1.5 years.
Right.
So that I realised that as much as I want to be a soulless creature that just focuses on money, I missed my soul. So I needed to come back to having a job that makes a difference. So this has actually been perfect. Like, coming to UNSW, I'm able to support students from afar by supporting teachers, and that helps me to try and do as much as I can to support staff to make a difference, but I'm not close enough to the students where I'm then putting my own mental health and well-being at risk.
Do you think that's a common problem amongst third space professionals, that kind of overworking and putting your own mental health in jeopardy?
Yes, from what I can see from various divisions and things, like, a lot of us are working with ridiculously small budgets, getting loaded with, hey, here's this new priority that we need to focus on, and hey, do this, and hey, do that, and yeah, let's just change this, or and so I think I think when you really care about what you do, you are at risk of not looking after yourself because you want to try and do the best that you can. And something I've found at UNSW, particularly with the ed dev community, is that it's a lot of really lovely, passionate people, and it's a lot harder to take time off for yourself when you know that your work is then falling on a really lovely colleague. So it's nice to work with such great people, and it's definitely better than working with jerks, but it does mean you have that sense of, like, responsibility that you sometimes stops you from looking after yourself.
So besides those mental health and those kinds of issues, do you think there's any other challenges that third space professionals are facing right now?
I think one of the biggest is, because we're in an academic environment, if you don't have a PhD, then you are sometimes taken less seriously. And which is unfortunate because, I talked about my background. Like, I've literally gone through every level of education. I've been working as an educational designer. And so it's difficult coming in and feeling like, well, maybe I should do a PhD just so I'm taken more seriously, which is insane. Like, that's an insane reason to do a PhD. Yeah, that's so much money and so much time just to satisfy quite an outdated thought, in my opinion. Like, if we look at the Accord, it outlines the need for micro-credentialing and to build up other ways for people to get qualifications. So we're moving towards a space where a PhD isn't going to be the be-all and end-all. And I think for people to acknowledge that real-life experience is important, and if you've worked in other spaces, it's important too, because sometimes, from an outside perspective, sometimes university can be a bit of a space where people are picked up straight from their PhD, put into a role, and it might not necessarily be a role that's related to their PhD. And so then they're not given enough support and professional development to do that role in the best possible way, which is not their fault. It's just a reality of the situation. And I think, when I look at different people across the university, like I know that there are those that are put into ed dev positions because they were really passionate about teaching and learning, or they were really good at it, or they were interested in it and were just kind of thrown in the position, but not given any training on how to, develop digital content, like how to use the Articulate suite, for example, which is, the main software that corporations and everything use to build professional development. And so many people across the university don't know how to use it, can't get funding to use it, and that should be standard, like that it's a really good quality program. And so what are we doing to support? And so I think that is, it's kind of that two-pronged approach. Like, if you don't have a PhD, you can be taken less seriously. If you do have a PhD, you're then not supported in other ways. So either way, we've got this problematic situation. So I think, there's a bit...
Yeah, if you have a PhD, they assume you know what you're doing. And if you don't have a PhD, they assume you have no idea what you're doing.
Exactly, yes. And we need to hit that happy middle ground where we're all helping each other.
A happy third space.
Oh, look at that.
So what do you think is important for third space professionals? I mean, and we are focusing on UNSW because we're here. But if we think about like sort of the broader sphere of third space across all of Australia and I guess all across the world, what do you think is important for third space people to be doing right now?
I would say there's two big things. So third space professionals in university in Australia, we need to be across the university's accord. That's the big one, is that we really need to know that and know it well, because hopefully it's going to lead to positive change within universities. And educational developers are going to have such a key role in supporting that movement, because in the Accord, it's calling for massive changes to the sector, including standards for teaching and learning, having minimum qualifications, ongoing professional development, and all those things. That's what we support as ed devs. So I think we really need to be across the Accord and what our spaces are doing to support it and what the university is doing. So the other thing is to approach everything through the lens of human-centered design, because we're in a really unique position in that at the moment it is up to individual schools or faculties in terms of what's mandatory. So anything that we do to provide to teaching staff, for the most part, they can choose whether or not they want to use it. And so if we design things to say, well, this is what has to be done, and we're just doing it in a way to get it over and done quickly, no one's going to use it, and that's pointless. So if we're working with our teaching staff and our academics and knowing where their pain points are and what support they need and building that around, so they want to engage with the way that we're supporting them and they want to build things together. I think that's what's really important is, doing things within the context that you sit rather than,
trying to create a new space.
Yeah. Or trying to go, well, in an ideal situation, you would have to do this, which it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I fully agree with that. Yes, I really need to get across the university's court. That has been drilled into me over the past few days, at least. It's like, oh boy, I really need to. Yeah, I need to study up. Finally, I just want to ask if there are people, because you've come directly into third space. If there are other people who wanted to follow your lead, who wanted to go straight into third space, what advice would you offer them?
I would say you want to come in with eyes open and just really touch base with the people that you are creating content or supporting. Like you need to, if you come in with preconceived ideas of the way things should be done, or come in thinking, oh, I'm going to do this thing and this thing and this thing without actually speaking to the end users, then I think that's where you run into trouble. Like, I think it's good to come in and you can be a little bit idealistic and eyes wide open, but like making sure that you're listening to people, but then also acknowledging the limitations that come with the role. Which, you know, whether it's budget or different priorities or whatever it is. So you need that sense of flexibility.
Eyes open, hearts open, but mind firmly around the actual problem. Don't open your mind so much that your brain falls out.
Yes, that's it.
As they say. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really enlightening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
To the listeners, thank you for tuning in to Inside the Third Space. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the third space. This episode of Inside the Third Space was presented and edited by me, Morgan Harris. Our producer is Agni Amarnath, and we were joined today by guest Lucy Jellema.